Welcome to the Allied Show, Damien Adler. Good to see you, mate.
Good to see you too, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining. We've kind of been on the skirts and have known of and worked together at a distance for years now, and it's really awesome to be able to sit down and chat through a whole heap of things, technology and healthcare, with you. So, mate, very grateful for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think, no, I agree. We've worked together now for a number of years, but actually haven't met. And I think we probably share some similar philosophies and approach, I think, to this space. So great to be able to have a chat.
Yeah, it is very interesting of where coming into a space like health, specifically allied health in Australia, at the moment, it's a place of care, and
Yeah,
that's, I think that's one of the biggest draw cards for me when I first was brought into the industry, well, stumbled into the industry, and then got to learn and meet a lot of professionals that were working in the space, and it just became something that I wanted to get involved in as a non-health professional.
yeah.
It took me a little bit longer as a non-health professional to kind of break down some walls, but we got there, and it's just been one of those things where learning about the industry and the work that happens every day, I think that's been one of the biggest things for me, and being able to share those experiences and having your experience now on the show is epic for me, because you've got a very unique perspective from essentially being a practice owner now through to, practice management software in the SaaS world. So, as a point of intro for everybody, registered psychologist
Yes.
since, I'm going to say,
Uh, Long time.
long,
Maybe 20 years or something.
yeah, long enough, long enough.
Yeah.
Um, and so talk us through the early days of setting up your practice, and then let's go into software a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife is a psychologist also, so we met at university and went down the path after university of going into the public system and working within the public system, which we did for a number of years, and then decided that we wanted to move into private practice. But we had sort of very specific ideas about how we wanted that practice, to run and to operate. And looking at it at the time, I think in Australia in particular, the allied health really has a history of being a cottage sort of industry. And often, it was sort of individual providers or very small kind of, maybe a few people sharing a building. And there wasn't necessarily a lot of team effect and team sort of approach to how things were certainly being done at that stage. And working in the public system, we'd seen the benefits of operating as a group, like working in teams, and the benefit of that. And we could sort of see that moving to private practice, it wasn't something that was being done, but there was a real need for it, and that practitioners often are happier and do better when they're around other practitioners, whether it's the same discipline or related disciplines. But there's, I think we're a social animal, so there's that element. And so we launched our private practice, and with that idea in mind that we were going to scale it, and we also sort of wanted to scale it for that reason, to have a group environment, but also I didn't want to be consulting forever. Like, I didn't want to just have a practice that was trading my time for essentially an hourly consultation rate and no ability to kind of grow or scale or have a bigger impact. So we set out with that intention, and I assumed at the time, as it turned out wrongly, that there'd be lots of software options available that would allow a lot of the administrative side of running a practice to be automated and to be done. And so I started like trying these different software packages and trying different ways of trying to make the practice efficient, and we were trying to make it so it could scale, because when you've got inefficient admin processes and then you try and grow, then your admin grows exponentially, and that sort of starts to consume more and more resources and becomes difficult to manage and not efficient, so it's costly and so forth. And so we started out. I think my wife started first. We wanted to see whether it would work at all. I stayed in the hospital system and working and making sure we still had some money coming in to pay the bills, and we did that, and then slowly, it happened fairly quickly, like over a space of about 6 months, that we sort of employed our first psychologist to join the practice with my wife. And then I started working like on weekends consulting and after hours. So I'd finish at the hospital and I would race down, I'd finish at 5 at the hospital, and I'd have my first appointment at 5:30, at the clinic, because I was trying to sort of build a significant enough caseload that I could leave the hospital and still pay the mortgage and all those sorts of things. And so from there it grew. We grew and grew the practice, and because we sort of had some of those ideals about how we wanted to run the practice that was supportive for clinicians and that was efficient for them, we were able to attract really good team members, which is often, as I'm sure everyone experiences, often quite difficult, finding the right team members. But because we had a sort of a clearly articulated philosophy about the sort of environment that practitioners want to work in, the flexibility they would have, the reduction of kind of admin and things that are outside of their actual clinical work. And we had then it was sort of a nice way to attract the right people, and then we were able to kind of grow, and we had very good retention of those team members as well. So that's how our practice grew, from there. And we have all the normal growing pains that practices have, and we signed up for a lease at small little 3-bedroom house had been converted into an office, and with 18 months we were outgrowing it, and we were locked in for a lease for longer, so we ended up buying another building and having this thing sitting there empty, and all the sorts of things that you just face palm kind of stuff that you think
I think that's so common, and I think you don't know when you're starting either. You don't, especially when you're starting by yourself. And I think that is a very common thing where you're like, okay, I'm going to start this. I really want to do it. And, okay, well, it's just me, 3 rooms. Oh, that's so much space.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get into it a little bit and you're like, I feel like I've made a mistake here in something that's like too small. And like, I get to see that a lot, where you've either, like you said, you've got to move, you've got to take that hit to allow the business to keep growing, and you only can learn from that.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the important things that you see that differentiate those that tend to do well and those that tend not to, is that willingness to kind of make mistakes and kind of roll with it, and you learn as much as you can, and have those moments where you think that was silly, maybe I should have thought about that differently, or whatever it might be. But ultimately that is the journey, isn't it? That and being okay with that, and not having that affect your confidence, like going forward. You're just like, yep, okay, what can I learn from that? Let's roll that in and keep going.
And it's literally a level of resilience that I think a small business owner growing into a medium-sized business, or even if you're by yourself, there's an understanding between anybody that has run a business, connecting us all at some point, of just this unrelenting resilience to be able to cope with the absolute madness that gets thrown at you every single day. I think that's an impact that I think we're trying to uncover of what's the actual psychological impact of being slammed every single day, like over and over. And we were chatting just before about a friend of mine who was doing some speaking training and things with me years ago, and a group of people at a workshop. And one of the things she said to me, she was it just stuck with me for years, of when you step on camera, when you step on stage, you're literally having your best day. Nobody is really worried about what has happened in the lead up to you getting here today. And I think that's one thing that, as business owners or leaders, you get very good at, is compartmentalizing and bouncing from one thing to the next.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that something that you've been able to do along the way?
Yeah, definitely. And the other element of that I would add is that I've become better at deciding what I care about as well, and I sort of look at both, with the practice, but also with powder, is to look at what are the key things that actually really matter and really move the needle, and what is just noise that actually you could put a lot of attention to, and it's not really going to make any difference. And I think that resilience is something I've found that has really been strengthened by taking that kind of approach and just thinking, does this actually matter? Because let's say, opinions, for instance, when you, like, if you go to launch a business or do something, there's always people like who are going to tell you all the reasons why it can't be done, or some story of someone who tried it and it didn't work. And, and so at the end of the day, I'd think about, well, who am I going to take advice from? Do I want to take advice from someone that I wouldn't want to trade places with where they are in their life, and go, well, okay, so the decisions they're making haven't led them to a place that I would like to swap with. Therefore, it's sort of, be polite and listen and whatnot, but I'm not internally, sort of, you brush it off or think, well, that's not relevant. And I think in business, I was thinking a lot about this the last few days from some work we were doing, that there is an endless number of things that you could focus on, right? But there's actually really only a few things that really kind of make a difference. And in terms of, running allied health practices, there's that, the people that you work with, like that's huge, like getting the right people and creating the right environment that those people are attracted to your business and want to stay in your business. I think, and then also developing the sort of the relationship with wherever your referrals are coming from, with where your patients are coming from. So, depending on the practice, it could be GPs and other health professionals, but it also could be other relationships that you have that where people sort of hear about you. So it could be about your public persona, if that's something that you're doing. It could be about reach out into the community, whatever it might be, but sort of focusing on the people that you're there with, and where those sort of referrals are coming from. And then within that, of course, the patient experience, and making sure that the things are sort of geared around getting them the outcomes that they're looking for. And so when you sort of combine those things and simplify things down like that, then a lot of the other stuff sort of becomes noise, and those things are that kind of the stuff that, well, and at least in the experience that I've had, that seems to kind of make the biggest difference and quietens your brain a bit as well, because it's there's less noise.
Yeah, it's pretty noisy. And I think when you are stepping into something that you're wanting to do from your own, personal beliefs and want to do something, when you step that out and you put that into the world, you're opening yourself up to a fair bit. And I think having that level of resilience, or the ability to kind of go, what do I actually care about, can only, in my experience, come with time. And caring about things that you really shouldn't care about for a little while. It just gives you a better understanding of, okay, well, looking back, maybe I think that I didn't really need to care that much about that problem. And I've always run with the philosophy of relationships, and even when something goes really bad, and it's gonna happen, somehow trying to retain a level of authenticity and go, what, this isn't going very well, rather than burning the whole bridge to the ground. Do you think, is that something that you've learned as well, that it's relationships that can generally get the job done?
Yeah, I do. And I think the authenticity part of that is something that has even broader kind of benefits and implications as well, because when you're constantly grounded in what is authentic and real, like, you don't need to overthink and over prepare because you're talking from, it sounds corny, but you're kind of talking from your truth, like what is like real. And so let's say if you look at it in terms of having a difficult conversation with a team member that maybe, there's some performance issues. And that's something that none of us, right? And I'm sure everyone who's been in business has had that experience, and no one, likes it. And you can get quite anxious about it. But if you go into that conversation, yes, prepared, so you're aware of whatever you've got the detail around what you're concerned about, but you're just talking, to them directly and honestly about the way you see things. So that's also not saying it's right; it's the perception that you have, and these are the concerns. You don't need to pre-rehearse and think about every possible thing that could happen, because you're just talking about, you can respond in real time to what they're saying and to the way that conversation actually flows, because it's just the truth. You're not going into it necessarily with an agenda of a particular outcome. You're going in with the agenda of progressing this issue and moving it forward, whatever that looks like. And so I think that does, again, help keep things grounded and keep your brain kind of a little bit quieter, and reduces the kind of cognitive resources that running businesses take, and maintaining those relationships takes. That there's less effort if it's just direct, and it's the same too when you make a mistake. I think it's the same thing. We're extremely transparent with our team and with people that stuff up. I'm like, yeah, stuff this up, or I approach this the wrong way. Let's have a look at it.
And I think that can sometimes get in the way of progress when you're slowing things down to overanalyze a mistake. Yes, it's important to analyze it, but it can just get in the way sometimes. But do you think you need thick skin to be a business owner?
I do.
Yeah,
I think you do, or either a thick skin or the sort of, I'm going to say confidence, but it's sort of the confidence that, look, my idea or approach is hopefully better, but certainly no worse than someone else's, right? So it's kind of it's that idea that why, if someone says that can't be done, at very least to say, well, I think it could be done, right? And go, maybe you're right, maybe I'm right. At least if you hold it on equal, at very least, that's good. So I think it's that ability to be able to hear those things, get the negativity, because it's going to recur, and be able to kind of at least go within yourself and go, well, I'm doing what's sort of true to me. Hopefully that's informed. You get all the sorts of information you collect, and it's not just it should be informed view, I would add, but and run with it that way, because then, and if you're open to the fact that you can be mistaken, you can make mistakes, and expect that as part of the journey too, it means that when something does happen, then and it goes wrong, you can kind of roll with it and go, yeah, well, that's kind of part of that, And I was talking to someone the other day actually on this very topic, and it's like, well, actually, the making something work just means that all you have to do is get slightly more things right than you get wrong, and you're going to be okay.
I love that. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt.
And when I was talking before about what things really matter, it's about the things that are catastrophic, that could go wrong. Then make sure you put a lot of attention, to those, because they're things that you're not going to recover from. And so you focus the right amount of energy on those things, but then everything else, you kind of you just need to get it above the batting average above your 50%, and you're going to be okay.
Do you think that's helped you be able to transition from essentially health professional to co-founder SaaS company?
Yeah, I think so, and that ability, that sort of willingness to kind of, I think, go into unknown territory, soak up as much information as possible. So we started PoweredRA because we couldn't find the right software and for what we were doing, and the sort of thesis was, well, if we're in this situation, we know people don't like doing admin. We know that health practitioners want to be practitioners. That's what no one goes to university to be an allied health practitioner and dreams about doing paperwork, right? And dreams about the admin side. They dream about helping patients, improving the health outcomes of people. So that was sort of a thesis. And then when we couldn't find, the system that, focused on making health practices easier to run, then I spoke to my brother, who, he has a strong technology background, and he had just sold his technology company to Telstra at the time. So he had this strong background experience and was available. So
Bit of free time.
Exactly. And I talked him into it and said, look, I'm sure there is a market here, that other people are going to be looking for, a system that helps them. And that's how we started. But, and that journey has been a combination of, having some, ideas about and making some bets on what I think is likely, where health is going, and being able to do that. And then doing a lot of listening, that to say, okay, I've got this experience that we're having in our health practice. What are other people having, and finding the commonalities and finding the things that, okay, if we add these features or if we take away these pain points, we're going to make health practices easier to run, and hopefully give health practitioners and health business owners their life back. We often sort of talk about give them their evenings back, give them their weekends back.
Yeah.
And so it's that kind of combination of lots of listening, and then but also at the end of the day you have to make a call on things. So and even to this day we have every bit of feedback we get, every suggestion, every feature request, that comes through any channel, whether it's standard ticketing or live chat or Facebook, whatever it might be. It actually gets categorized and logged into a system. And then our product team and us, we meet, my co-founder Paul and I will meet with that team every week. We look at what trends are, and we look at, and all that information that's coming from users, in Australia, but also globally, that is used to kind of as one of the inputs for what's the next feature, that we roll out. And because we start the planning for that a few months in advance, so that our development teams are always, have got the work to do, and it's all prepared for them ahead of time. So that combination of sort of listening, and then, but not being afraid. At the end of the day, you have to kind of make a call and say, okay, I think this is going to be, where things are going to go, and let's do this next thing next. And you hope you're right.
Yeah, I think I love looking at the polarizing effect of when you start a business to where it's at right now. And you were just talking about development teams and product teams and all of this stuff. When you started, it was the two of you. Yeah. And it was actually called something else, right?
Yes. It's funny thing. So we had in our own practice, we had subscribed to a system that was called Pencil Me In.
Yeah.
Right. And it was this one guy who had sort of started to build something that seemed kind of aligned, to what I was thinking. So I signed up, and we're like, okay. But he didn't develop it. He wasn't doing anything with it, And I had sort of spoken to him and said, look, do you want a partner? Do you want, you're obviously struggling. I can feed you the inside information of what's needed. And for one reason or another, is a long story, but he really wasn't developing it. And so I when I spoke to my brother, I said, look, let's acquire the code base for this, right? Because this guy's not, anything, and let's have a look at that, right? And use that. And so that's actually what we did. We acquired that, and then when we kind of looked at it, and we essentially we rebranded it, but also then we rebuilt the whole thing. So we kind of went, okay, we see kind of what he was the idea that he had actually was right. He sort of had started. But it's very hard. I'm not saying this in a negative way about that person. It's a hard thing to do, because development's very expensive, and you've got to make these bets, and you don't have any customers that win. So you're investing, and we were investing our own money. We didn't have any outside capital or anything. We did it bootstrapped, for the SaaS lingo, but and took it from there. But no, for the first quite a while, it was Paul doing the development, and I was doing all the other things, sales, marketing, product demos. I did the website, our first, website, well, the first couple of websites, I think actually I did. And when we got we got a phone number, for we had in the clinic, we had a receptionist, and she was obviously using our software, one of the first, and so I put an extra phone on her desk one day. I said, like, this software, if that phone rings, answer it with Power Diary and help them with whatever their question is. So
our first customer support team.
Our psychologist receptionist, psychology practice receptionist, she was our first customer support team ever. And then slowly, bit by bit, it resonated. We in fact didn't have very much marketing going on at all, because we were really just wanting to we're working on the product, listening to feedback, developing the product, and so we had a lot of word of mouth. And then I still remember the first person we hired that was actually going to be doing support for us in the psychology practice. She was in the office there, and in fact she's still with us actually to this day, and now she's she has a lot of she's in the product department and really is amazing. Like, she has shapes a lot of the features and does a lot of the really stuff that affects what the software does.
Yeah, awesome.
Because she's got such a good long insight into the system.
I think like that, even just that itself of sometimes when you see a finished product, you sometimes forget the hustle, or I don't necessarily like the word hustle, but it's the day-to-day stuff that you just need to do to get things done, to get it off the ground, to get it moving, to get that first person to say yes, or this is really cool, let's do this. And a lot of the time it's someone that you've already got in your network, whether it's an employee or a friend or a parent or a brother or a sister, and there's always that one person that's gone, yeah, sure, I'll do it. That helps you to get where you want to go, because you can't get there by yourself. Like, could you imagine having to do that by yourself? Like, that's incredible. Like,
that's right. And I think that those, as we're talking about before, about relationships and partnerships and things, that they make such a big difference. And they also help, I think, where it helps as a balance to your own thinking. It sort of helps get sort of different ideas in, and even helps, I think, with things like, inevitably when businesses are developing, you have varying degrees of enthusiasm and motivation and things like that over time, when you're talking about a long sort of time span. And I think working like together with other people helps with that. And I think if you're a solo operator, which or you're a solo owner, which a lot of people are, I think getting involved in business groups and coaching groups and getting other people that are engaging with you that are relatable, makes a huge difference. And again, also helps with resilience, because learning and hearing that, oh, it's not just me, that's having that issue or that has time of self-doubt or whatnot. I think it's reassuring. It inspires, builds confidence, and certainly helps a lot.
Yeah. Did you ever doubt this process? Did you ever doubt being involved with Power Diary?
I think in the early stages, the economics of it are terrible, right? So because I was doing the demos and I was doing the more complex sales, like calls and responding to things. And so I've got a thriving private practice by that stage, and I was still doing a lot of direct consulting, and I can't remember what the hourly rate was at the time, but I might have spent 3 hours with onboarding a new customer, right? Because it wasn't as user friendly as it is now, and we've learned a lot and we've automated a lot and made it so people can just jump on and all the rest of it. But at the time, it's a raw product. And so I would spend, all this time, and then there would be a solo practitioner, and I'm thinking, okay, so I've just invested 3 hours over, and now they're going to pay us like $40 a month or $50 a month. And so I would kind of think, and that's not profit. That's you're still running the company, and so the economics of it at the start, like, are really, really not good. And so there were times in the early stages where, I would think about whether it was wise, and we would pour any money, like just always reinvest. So I would sort of think about, whether that was, but it was really though a belief in what we were doing, more than the economic side of it, that I never doubted, right? Because you just look around and you see how the administrative side of running practices, what a burden that is, on practice owners, how it can suck the joy and passion out of what they do. Like, it's heartbreaking when you kind of talk to practice owners and they're tired, they're not enthusiastic, they're jaded often because they've had some negative experiences. They feel like often they're behind all the time, have that kind of feeling of, I'll never catch up, I'll never have everything done. And that's such a contrast from when they left university fired up, and and so that really was the kind of driver, and never, that part of it was never, never once kind of, because we're just like, well, let's just keep going and keep making it better and learning, and making this problem, if we can help practitioners operate more effectively, it's helpful for them, but it's also helpful for healthcare provision, right? Because it means that more practitioners stay doing the work, they're happier, they've got more of their time delivering services instead of admin. I mean, it just goes on and on. So that's been, that's that, I guess, the health practitioner in me that likes that idea of, helping and making an impact. It's that, just in a different manifestation.
Yeah, and you're always, I think, as a health professional, it's your chosen profession. You're kind of wired to always want to help. And I think when it gets to the point where you're no longer getting to do that as a business owner, as a practice owner, that, I think that's where it all starts to come undone a little bit, where, this isn't essentially what you signed up for. Yes, taking on and starting a business, you do sign up for a lot of stuff that comes with that. But at the end of the day, you want it to be a psychologist or a dietitian or a speech pathologist. And I think you then shift that into, okay, I want to influence and I want to help more people. How can I do that? All right, well, I'm going to have to start this for myself, and I have to build a team. And then all of a sudden you're a CEO and you've got nothing to do with actually helping people on the ground every day anymore. And like, that's got to be a massive transition.
Yeah. And I think the way I often think about that, and I talk to people about it, is that I think success in growing like a group practice is about doing as much direct work as they want to, right? So not out of necessity, right? Not because they need to do that to pay the bills, or right. So because it varies for different people and even different stages of their career, where there's sometimes that they want to be at that coal face and that service provision. There might be other times where they maybe want to break from patient interaction and want to help shape and deliver services via sort of other people. Maybe they're having kids or young families and other things going on in their life. They're like, okay, I want to do the direct work, but I want to still have that influence. So I think success is where people get to sort of choose the amount, right? And it's not driven by like the financial necessity. Like, it's okay, the practice, it's sustainable, successful, it runs, it's efficient. I choose to do some direct consulting. That to me, it's where you see like there's a kind of happiness, a contentment that you see in practitioners when they sort of achieve that it's sort of, because it's matching their goals, it's matching what sits right for them, and not due to economic reasons or other things that can impact.
Yeah, and I think like fundamentally, as a health professional, you're working within an industry that is very data driven now. And obviously the safety of that information is kind of continually coming up all the time now.
Yes.
And I know recently Howard Ari was given an ISO certification, which is like, it was a massive achievement.
Yeah.
I think, what was that process like?
Yeah, that was it goes back to that when we're talking about focus on the things that really matter and that really, and worry about those things. So data security and privacy, clearly hugely important in this space. And one of the things that we sort of realized and just thought, really it's not right, is that the industry isn't like directly regulated, like the management, like practice management systems. Okay, there's legal requirements that but there isn't actually a sort of regulator or an oversight body that's going to come in and do an audit. It's very reactive. Like if something goes wrong, sure, you'll then get a lot of attention. But it's so important, and as a practitioner, I know like the how significant that is. So we kind of decided that we shouldn't be self-assessing our security and our privacy, right? Because we've always had a focus on it. It's always been, front of mind. But if we have gaps in our thinking, or if we are focused on the wrong things because, you've got a blind spot, how is that going to get picked up, right? And, like you don't know what you don't know, right? So like we could be covering everything that we know and have a whole blind spot that we don't know, and we don't know, if that makes sense. So we sort of thought, look, to do this in a genuine way, we need to make sure that first that we're adhering to, like make sure we identify what the international standards are, and that incorporates the local standards. So each of the markets that we sort of operate in, look at what the sort of best practice is, but then also like have that externally audited and assessed, right? Now with ISO 27001, so that's the security, that's a accreditation process. So we implemented actually a whole software program that manages and tracks every element of the business and every element of compliance, where we look at, in addition to like all the normal things you'd expect, such as the monitoring of the systems and intrusion protection and things, but that monitors all that, but also all the human elements of it, right? Which is often what is missed. What the training is, what the policies are, making sure that everyone's up to date, that no one slips through the gaps, that everyone has been trained and assessed in these sorts of areas, and making that system, like do it in a systematic way, rather than an ad hoc kind of or a lip service kind of way. So yeah, it was quite a project. Probably took us about 12 to 18 months or something of work, to do that. We also have full-time in-house security, like person who just focuses on like security, and also a person who just focuses on our privacy and data management. So that are have backgrounds and expertise in those that are working with us all the time in every element. And then we put it into like a system, and then the auditors come, and that's heavy. Like it's you get they review everything. You have to give them access to all the everything. They look at not just what you say you do. You have to show the evidence of doing those things consistently, and then you get interviewed, right? And that's interesting. Like so, all the key people get interviewed. You get interviewed by a panel, and some of the interviews go for hours, like hours of, and you have to be able to show in real time during the interview, answer the question and show the evidence, right? Yeah. So you can't go away and then create a document or create something. Like if you do, it will be noted. Like it will be, okay, we found this was inadequate. By the end of the process, okay, you have it, but it will be written up that. Anyway, we achieved that, which was fantastic. But we also applied the same approach now to other areas of compliance so our GDPR, which actually, is focused on Europe and UK, but actually is the foundations for privacy globally. So when you go into, like, you look at Australia's, or you look at US, or you look at, Canada and other places we work, it's all actually the language, often it's just directly taken from there. So it's like the strictest standard. So we recently had that independently assessed and audited. Same with HIPAA. We've just finalized external HIPAA audit for US, our privacy and security processes there. So yeah, it's I'd say a very resource intensive experience, but extremely worthwhile, and really delivers. Again, it's sort of, we're able to sort of say, okay, these are all the things that we are doing, we're getting, and it's not a one-off, we actually have to maintain it. So we have yearly reviews and audits that get done. So it's sort of then, we can say this is something that we really always will need to focus on. So let's build a way of doing it properly that doesn't rely, or at least sort of allows for our own fallibility or blind spots. Get that externally, assessed and hold us to that account, so that we can say, okay, yeah, we are doing everything we possibly can, to make sure we're implementing all the possible safeguards. And again, it's one of those things that helps, talk about keeping the noise out of your brain. It's like, okay, well, that's a big one. All right, if we do this, it never goes away as a worry. It's something we're always vigilant about, but at least you can go, okay, we're doing everything that we reasonably can.
Yeah, I think it is a big topic, and there's been a lot of cases, especially in Australia, of where some data has been compromised, and it's one thing that I think it's always a matter of knowing that you're doing everything you possibly can to protect that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's got to be okay. And we trust in that process and go, okay, knowing it's audited, we're doing everything we possibly can to do the right thing here. And go, as long as we keep that up, then, you're doing the best that you possibly can. It's ever changing. It's always going to keep changing. So I think that's just one of the topics that we could talk about for ages, because it is constantly changing, and it affects everybody now. I think that's the other thing is data security affects everybody, because there'd be a very, very small percentage of people who don't have some form of data somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's something that, we need to be aware of. And it's part of a risk of modern society now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other part is the way in which data is used, is the other sort of side of the coin as well, that data can be held securely and that tick the box on that side, but then use it in a way that, the patients wouldn't be happy with or are not aware of, and that's the other side of being sort of very clear about data ownership, and being clear that no, we don't view it as our data. It's your data that we're managing for you in this environment, and this is what we're doing to look after it. But we're not going to be using that data for some other like commercial purpose. And sometimes you see that's where you see some systems, or you see some things where they might be offering something free or something, and you're like, okay, like if I like that kind of saying that if you're not paying for something, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product,
Yeah.
But it's it's so you see it in different ways. Like even in Australia a few years ago, one of the big companies, they got caught out. They were utilizing data for, I think they were selling data to legal firms as a lead for workers' compensation, cases and things, and like that sort of stuff. That you just you have to kind of be squeaky clean and be really clear about. This, our business model is this: we provide this service. This is the fee structure. We don't have anything else going on where we're kind of sort of mining that, or and you see across the world different things happening. You think that's going to be another area in the next few years, where as AI, becomes more and more prevalent, the value of that data actually goes up, and because it becomes, people could use it for training models and things like that. And so I always think, like, whenever there's the value goes up of something, the temptation for people to do, like the wrong thing goes up. And that's where I think just having external oversight and having that outside your own systems of people monitoring and watching, making sure everything is spot on, is it's just important. And I don't think that's going to go away in the future. I think it will just become more and more,
Yeah, I think it's not going to go away. It's just going to be, there's more and more things popping up. So especially within that AI space and training models, like you said, that data is the one thing that if you can feed it data, then you're onto something. So that's going to be very interesting to look at over the next couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. And I think,
yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, is that something that, what do you see the role of that playing for you guys?
it's interesting, and it's something where of course, like everyone else, you sort of look at, because AI will be with us and clearly going to be something that offers a lot of kind of opportunity, and a lot of, I think efficiencies, can be derived, and we're sort of looking at that pretty closely. But the line, like that has to be there is that, it's got to be like the active consent and participation of anyone whose data is being utilized, right? That has to be a conscious, deliberate, informed kind of, choice. And so it's too early to tell yet, I think, which way in health, like where that's going to land, in the way in which, people utilize it. There's theoretically some, really good sort of applications of data, but then there's also, I guess, concerns that I have about, the data matching, and the ability to reconstruct anonymized data is something that I think is a fairly significant concern that is, in my view, sort of underrated at the moment. So in some cases, you'll see terms that are, look, we use your data for a bunch of commercial stuff, but we only do it in a way that's de-identified, right? Now, they're very light on detail usually, what when you say de-identified, how de-identified, right? So, whereas when you start pairing up, if you get multiple data sets all de-identified and you start running some AI algorithms over them, you can start to get fairly good reconstruction of that data, right? So, and we know, I mean, sure, like in business, it happens all the time, right? Where you end up on mailing lists and you end up on things where there's aggregators that will get information from different things and work out, this number here, like on my mobile, like, I don't typically have it published anywhere, right? But somewhere at some point I will have. And, the data aggregation goes, you own a SaaS company, and that might be good for this marketing company who wants to try and sell you some, thing, and they get it and they call you and you think, how did you get that, right? But that's how, there's obviously a lot of incentive to kind of match data up. Now, when it comes to health data, like that's concerning, right? Because theoretically, you could have insurance providers or, that, might have an interest in understanding someone's history. And, there's, like the more detailed, the more, if you were calculating, premiums and risks and so forth, it would be a very concerning situation if data was sort of reconstructed in a way that made it identifiable. And, so there's those sorts of things I think we have to be, extremely cautious about. The other side to it too is about the way in which the learning models, the way they consume the data and how that might sort of get utilized. So, that the concern, the worst case is that if it consumes it as knowledge, as generally applicable knowledge, right? Well, don't need to elaborate how bad that would be, if that. So I think it's something that, we have to be, I think all of us in the kind of space have to be, pause, think carefully, understand, make sure that, in the ways that it is utilized going forward, that those things are eliminated, as risks, and that certainly there's no surprises that people don't, that's the concern I have, where people have, data policies and data use policies that are a bit loose and gives them the wiggle room. And then, if incentives are there, like to do things that perhaps, wouldn't be what was intended, with that originally. But, overall, I mean, I love tech, right? So I love the overall as a, I think it's exciting, the AI overall, it's exciting. There is a lot of potential. I don't think in health we should stick our head in the sand either and say, we're not going to use this to leverage. I'm not saying that I'd be comfortable using any of the existing things, in the current form in a way that would be, accessing, anything. But I think overall we should be, as practitioners as well, learning how it can be safely used to, get better outcomes. But we've got to not just sort of join the enthusiastic rush and everyone sort of, jump off the AI cliff, because it's a one way, it's once starters out there, it's out there, and you can't reel that back in. I think there's that, there's a lot of people, I think, there's the first mover advantage. A lot of people are kind of, rushing to try and, get AI attached in some way or another. I think it's, it needs caution, and AI will be with us for some time. So there's no rush to kind of, be the first to kind of do something, with it. We can kind of evaluate, let the industry settle a little bit. And then, I think as it matures, work out what's sensible to do, what people are comfortable with, and do it that way.
I remember explaining to someone the other day that they had concerns about AI, and how it's all so new. And I'm like, oh, just on that, I was like, how your phone, when someone phones you, your iPhone goes, maybe Chris McCarroll, or when you're typing a text message and there's predictive text, that's AI. It's been in your life for a very long time. And I think now, like, the knowledge and the awareness of it is a lot higher. So obviously with that, you can run some fear campaigns, you can run, all of those things around it. But, it's genuinely, at this point, my opinion is it's going to make our lives better if we are able to manage it properly. What that looks like, I have no idea, but I'm keen to kind of see what that plays out like. And I think that kind of leads into my final question for you is, on your shirt, it's got changing the game. What does that mean for you?
So where that comment came from was when we were reviewing all the feedback, so we get the online reviews and, things like that. And we were looking at like theme analysis and what comes out of that. And we kept on seeing this, like, as a game changer for me, right? Game changer. And, music to our ears, of course, right? What it means, to me, is really about changing the experience of operating and, private practices and, or I should say health practices. We have a lot of the NGOs and things using this system as well, but changing like that delivery of healthcare. So changing the experience for practitioners, changing the experience for practice, owners. And, the game changer is that kind of the context that people usually write that, is they'll say something like, it was a game changer. Before I was, I had high no-shows and I had outstanding, like a lot of outstanding invoices and, blah, blah, blah. And, now it's just all seamless, or it's just, I just don't have all that extra work to do. And that when they're talking about a game changer, they're really talking about like the impact on their practice, but then also on them personally, right? Because there's really often not much of a distinction, right? If someone's practice is doing well, they're usually doing, they're feeling good. If their practice is not doing well, their life feels like it's not, often. So that's what it means, is sort of really shifting that and allowing people to like do what they're passionate about and focus the maximum amount of time and resources on that. And then, having the system, how to manage the practice and we're constantly looking at ways of, what's the next pain point that's most, not, what's the next sort of things that we can kind of remove and automate and then, take that away. And then what's the next, so we're constantly kind of looking at just taking away those pain points and making it smoother and easier and less manual, to run practices.
I think it's, it has. And I think, there's a lot of benefits in having something. I think you've genuinely created something that has come from a significant problem, and the way that that's evolved over time to the product that we see now. I think it's exciting to kind of see what can be done in the future. So I'm so glad we were able to go through some of this stuff and see like the challenges and what's been happening and how it's all come about. Because like I said earlier, you see an end product a lot of the time, the so-called overnight success that took 10 years. So it's like, that look at it and go, yeah, there's so much work that's gone into it. There's so much behind the scenes, from that first, customer support um, person helping you answer the phone. It it's massive, mate. So
Yeah.
congratulations on getting this far, and I'm keen to kind of see where it ends up.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chris. And yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to chat.